According to a CNN report, the nation's largest credit union has the most significant loan approval gap between Black and white applicants among the top 50 lenders nationwide. The report reveals that Navy Federal Credit Union approved more than 75% of the white borrowers who applied for a new conventional home purchase mortgage in 2022. The bank, which lends to military service members and veterans, based on the data in CNN's findings, showed African-American mortgage applicants were twice as likely to be denied as white applicants. Navy Federal spokesperson Bill Pearson says the CNN report does not accurately reflect the company's practices. Now, I want to go to you first with this story, Attorney Jesse Hamilton McCoy, because I know you deal with housing. And this is a story I submitted to Carol, the producer of the show, that I wanted to talk about today. Oftentimes, I remember back April 4th, 2018, there was, if I remember correctly, it was a Gallup poll that came out. Now, this was the 60th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And the poll stated that 40% of white Americans believe that African Americans could be equally as successful as white people if we just tried harder. And going into the 2024 presidential election, you have people who think racism doesn't exist or that white people are the biggest victims of racism. Talk about what a study like this means and how it impacts African-American generational wealth.
So we have to understand that housing and home ownership is the main catapult into entering middle-class society and to any kind of income elevation. So by restricting access for people to be able to go and secure housing, you are setting back not just the person who's seeking the housing, but generations that can achieve wealth as as the homes purchased increase in value over time. But the main thing I got from learning about this story is, like, are we surprised? This isn't something new that just happened today. This is something that's been happening historically. And the fact that that's the reason why we have federal law that is trying to make parity amongst this, but it's not a shock. I think that one of the things that the Navy Credit Union maybe looks at a little bit differently is that because it's a credit union, I think we gave them a false sense of security. We felt like, okay, it's a credit union. It's not one of the traditional big banks that we would expect to engage in this kind of behavior. And maybe because of that, it'll be more equitable. However, what we are seeing in these numbers doesn't necessarily reflect that same degree of equity. And it looks like this is a continuation of processes that have happened before. The fact that their gap between white applicants and Black applicants is so large, especially compared to the bigger banks, does raise cause for concern. And I know that Navy Federal can have spokespeople who will say it's not an accurate reflection of what their practices are and doesn't take into account other factors such as credit score. But it looks like on the CNN the CNN article, that they did factor in the credit scores, and they did still have this huge disparity in the number of people who are approved. I think the other thing that was telling about the article was when people find out that they aren't approved. So it wasn't that people found out initially as soon as they applied. It was usually right before they were getting ready to close on the house, which is probably the worst time to find out that your mortgage didn't go through. And what that does, particularly in a market that is increasing in value, means that if you have to go back out here and find another bank, and all of them seem to find another bank within 2 weeks, well, the value of that home may have gone up because there may have been additional offers that increased in value on that home. Right. So now you may be taking out a larger loan. So it's all kind of part and parcel to barriers to home ownership and thus barriers to creating that generational wealth.
All right, thank you. Avis, the article goes on to say the disparity remains even among white and Black applicants who had similar incomes and debt-to-income ratios. Notably, Navy Federal approved a slightly higher percentage of applications for white borrowers making less than $62,000 a year than it did of African American borrowers making $140,000 or more a year. So much for all you need to do is work harder. Now, a deeper statistical analysis performed by CNN found that African American applicants to Navy Federal were more than twice as likely to be denied as white applicants, even when more than a dozen different variables, including income, debt to income ratio, property value, down payment percentage, and neighborhood characteristics were the same. Avis, you've been helping African Americans start businesses, grow their businesses, build generational wealth, et cetera. Give us your take on this study and what it means.
Absolutely. And even before that, I was part of the Ford Foundation's Closing the Racial Wealth Gap initiative. And so this work around access to housing is a huge one, as was mentioned, because access to home ownership is a big variable when we talk about the wealth gap that exists. Right now, whites typically have about 10 times the wealth as a typical Black family. And a big chunk of that has to do with the wealth that people can amass through home ownership and be able to pass down that level of wealth from one generation to the next. So what we're seeing here is just another example of, in essence, I would call the Black tax. I mean, we pay more for things. And in one direction, we pay more for things oftentimes than our white counterparts. I would argue oftentimes we'll pay more for car insurance. We'll pay more for lots of sort of things like that. But in addition to that, we're less likely to gain access to wealth acquisition vehicles like home ownership. I've seen other studies that have shown even steering by sometimes real estate agents who are less likely to show Black customers who would qualify to purchase a home in a certain area, one would think, given the statistics, are less likely to show them those homes that might be in what they see as being a largely white neighborhood. I mean, this is a problem that we've had in this country for years, and it's very disturbing that this particular finding would come out with this specific credit union that I think a lot of people would have expected more from, number one, because it's a credit union, number one, number two, because it's a very popular credit union. And then when you see just the huge disparity in the income, it almost makes me think about the fact that, another sort of disparity, if you think about the fact that, Black women, for example, tend to have to earn almost a PhD before they make on par with, in terms of their wages, as a white guy with a GED. So right. As you mentioned, there's so many ways to put it. Working harder does not get us the same results. We can't outwork discrimination, and this is just one example of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Attorney McCoy, we know that the median household net worth for a white family is about 8 times that of an African-American family. Now, it's not because white people work 8 times harder. It's not because they're 8 times smarter. It's because of laws and policies and a history in this country that has maldistributed wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. Now, to be fair, I talked about this at the beginning of this segment. I'm going to come to you again, Attorney McCoy. In a statement, Navy Federal spokesperson Bill Pearson defended the credit union's lending practices. And he said that the CNN analysis, quote, does not accurately reflect our practices, end quote, because it did not account for, quote, major criteria required by any financial institution to approve a mortgage loan, end quote. Those factors included credit score, available cash deposits, and relationship history with lender. So talk about what that means. Is that a good argument? Because there's a huge history in discrimination when it comes to African Americans getting home mortgages, refinancing home mortgages. And also, if you look at the research from the Brookings Institute a few years ago, Andre Perry, African American homes are valued collectively at $156 billion less than comparable white homes. Talk about that, Attorney McCoy.
So first of all, if the question is that a good argument, my response is no. I think that we've already seen that even with similarly situated credit scores, there's still not going to be the same acceptance for mortgage applications across different racial metrics. I think on top of that, if there are other factors that he's saying that Navy Federal is using to differentiate, we should be able to know what those factors are. And I think one of the problems is that right now there's no federal law that allows us to really find out what the internal mechanism is for credit unions to be able to make these decisions. So he can kind of hide his hand at the same time as trying to kind of toe the company line. What I will say, though, is nothing that he's doing is uncommon, or nothing that AB Federal Credit Union is accused of doing is uncommon. All of the banks have disparities, just not in this great of a proportion for 2023. And so these are things that, as we've mentioned before, if we are unable to access home ownership and develop from the appreciated value of that home ownership wealth that we can pass down to other generations, or use to start our own businesses, or use to send kids to college, or whatever the case may be, then it's furthermore a thumb on the scale of trying to achieve income equality.
Absolutely. And very quick before we wrap up this segment, Attorney McCoy, if you can just take a quick minute and talk about what can the Department of Justice, for instance, do when we have proven, not just a study, but an investigation and then proven evidence of discrimination? What type of legal action can be taken? If you can talk about that for maybe about a minute, about 60 seconds.
Well, certainly that would be a violation of several federal policies. So one would be the Fair Housing Act. One would be truth in lending. If you're finding that there are deceptive ways that they're trying to connect people with lending practices, or if they're trying to deny you for some standard that is not necessarily incorporated into any of the mortgage application evaluation processes. But the problem for that is these are federal statutes for which you have to sue, which means you probably have to get an attorney, which means that's going to cost more money to bring the action forward and to get the justice that you're seeking from a court system, which a lot of people just don't have the resources to do, particularly if they're seeking a mortgage to buy a home.
Okay, thank you. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back. Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep from the African History Network. Our Kwanzaa online history course bundle pack is on sale right now. We have a fantastic promotion for you. Get our bundle pack of 2 online history courses that I teach, as well as my 15 lecture downloadable bundle, African History Awakens the African Mind from Mental Death. These are both from me, Michael Imhotep. They're on sale right now for only $100. That's 76% off. My first online history class is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Kemet is one of the original names for Egypt. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles. There's about 100 articles that we cover in the class, over 200 slides that I put together as well. And there are also video clips, including excerpts of interviews I've done with some of our historians and scholars, as well as Renuka Rashidi, Professor James Small, Anthony Browder, Professor Kabahayawafa Kamene, and Dr. David Imhotep. In the second class that I teach, it's called Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, the U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. And we dig in deep and look at history chronologically from 1800 to 1968 and look at what leads to the Civil War taking place. We study the Jim Crow era, the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, and the Great Migration, 1915 and 1970. To understand what happened to us after slavery ended, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us where we are today, to understand where we need to go from here. I created both of these classes, created the curriculum, chose the content as well. This sale ends Monday, January 1st, 2024. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You'll see the promotion at the top of the page. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. You can join us for our next online class live Sunday, January 7th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch all of these classes on demand, and even after the course is over with, you don't lose access. Register right now Order right now. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This sale ends Monday, January 1st, 2024. Also, if you'd like to stop for information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever.